Hello, good morning, everybody, to the Leicestershire and Rutland Combined Fire Authority Local Pension Board at its meeting at the Gutlaxton Committee Room at County Hall, Glenfield. Today, 12th of March 2024. It's just gone 10 o'clock in the morning. I welcome all to the meeting, and in particular dialing in from the West Yorkshire Pension Fund. Helen Scargill, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine, yes, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for dialing in, and we look forward to your update in a few minutes when we get to that point in the agenda. But I'd like to start the meeting firstly by noting if there are any apologies. Graham vote, thank you. Right, okay, we'll note that, thank you. Item 2 on the agenda are minutes of the local pension board meeting held on the 16th of November 2023. They have been circulated. They appear in the document pack, pages 3 to 6. Can I take it that those are accepted as written? So noted. Do we need any formal vote on that? They are approved. Item 3 on the agenda is the declaration with regard to any conflicts of interest in respect of any matter on the agenda. Are there any conflicts of interest? None. So we move on to item 4 on the agenda, and that is the scheme managers update. And I will pass over to Colin Sharp, the pension scheme manager, to provide the latest update to the board. Over to you, Colin.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I've prepared a shortish introduction to my report. I'm obviously happy to take any questions. I'm sure Helen will jump in and assist, and Sean, if he arrives in the meantime, will as well. Otherwise, we'll do the best we can. So the purpose of this report, as usual, is to provide an update on the management of the firefighters pension scheme. So as with my report to the meeting last November, I've sought to focus on looking forward to deliver the tasks in hand, whilst again providing members with some background to the Sergeant McLeod remedy and the Matthews on-call retained second options exercise, just as a refresher. Together, of course, with routine governance reporting such as breaches and any scheme manager decisions. The overriding message remains a very high volume of work to get through by March 2025. We have limited skilled and experienced staff resources within the fire service, finance and HR teams to do this. The calculator tools from the government actuary and the pension statement formats are still being developed nationally and keep changing. We have ongoing challenges accessing historical pay and tax data, and there seems to be continual new uncertainties emerging regards to detail of what we're doing, and also there is, I think, a likelihood of further claims being received either nationally or locally. Having said that, we do still expect to deliver our part locally whilst keeping the day-to-day show on the road. But as I said, we need to recognise those significant uncertainties and risks, both locally and nationally, and the pressure on staff. But some good progress has been made. For example, we've completed all the remedy data sets for Sergeant Matthews and sent those over to West Yorkshire Pension Fund, to Helen. And as you'll receive from the report, we also dispatched 370 Matthews second option warm-up letters just before Christmas, which was quite a major task in itself. So turning just to some of the detail in the report, as I say, finance and HR teams continue to process the day-to-day pensions work alongside the remedy and Matthews work. And as you'll note, the implementation remedy for both, excuse me, is set out in the regulation, runs through to the end of March 2025. The timeline for the National Pensions Dashboard has been extended. In the report, I put summer 25. I see from West Yorkshire Pension Fund update yesterday. That is now crystallised to be September 2025. So that's when West Yorkshire will need to connect with the new national pensions dashboard, so that people can find summary details of all their pensions in one place. As also noted, the pensions regulator undertook a governance and administration survey across pension funds and has published the results of that. And one of the things on my task list is to go through the results of that and their fact sheet to see if there are any areas of development locally. I expect one area of focus will be training and awareness of board members, and to that end I'd encourage you to sign up to the LGA training that's now being offered on a quarterly basis, and indeed to ask officers for any additional support that you may need, because as we all know, this is a very complex topic and keeps changing, and there's a lot of pressure on everybody to get done what we need to do. As you know, as scheme manager, I'm obliged to report any breaches to you, and there is one to report this time, albeit which I think can be seen as rather technical, and which is undoubtedly replicated across probably most, if not all, other fire and rescue authorities. And that's the warm-up letters for the Matthews second options exercise. So as you'll have seen from the report, we had to write to all current and former retained firefighters that we thought might be in scope. That's the 370, and we had to inform them of their options, of their rights to buy back additional pension by the end of December. However, of those 370 that we believe to be in scope, some 300 are no longer employed by the service. So it won't surprise the committee to learn that we don't necessarily hold up to date addresses for all of those. So unsurprisingly, a number of those letters have been returned, has gone away or no longer at the address, and therefore those people did not receive the information about their right to choose to buy back a pension by the end of December. So that constitutes a technical breach, and the advice to scheme managers is to report that to our local pension boards. And also, as noted in the report, we are engaging a tracing agency to actually look at the addresses of all those people that haven't returned their letters, so that we can gain greater assurance about what their current addresses might be. Here's the gentleman that is engaging said tracing agency. Just moving on, so with regards to the Matthews letters more generally, of those 370 letters that we sent, we've had responses to about 100 of them. Most have expressed an interest in buying retrospective pension benefits, which is what you would expect, because both people will stand to gain from this. Although we have had a small number of people saying that they don't wish to, they don't wish to buy back, or the person is no longer alive, etc. And we are now following those up individually. And as I said, we're via Sean, the 3 fire services are engaging a tracing agency to get us more up-to-date address details. And once we've got what we believe to be current address details for everyone that hasn't responded, we'll be sending out further letters. Just turning to some other matters, I should also make you aware, again as set out in the report, that national delays to implementing the Sergeant McLeod age discrimination remedy will impact the previously published national timetable to which we're expected to work. The latest delay is around tax on interest payments. So people entitled, former firefighters entitled to the remedy obviously receive their pension arrears and lump sum arrears, and they're entitled to 8% interest on that. That's the rate that I understand is usually used in such situations for employment tribunal related matters. And a few weeks back there was some national change to how that is going to be taxed, and that has caused some issues within the sector. And HMRC have, I think a couple of weeks ago, published updated guidance on it, but I understand there's still issues with the guidance, and therefore there is still a pause on processing what the old category 2s, as they were, processing certain of the remedy payments that we were hoping to get done sort of by the end of March this year. And Helen or Sean, I'm sure, better to explain more on that if necessary. I know Helen's involved in some national discussions again on this one. So it was thought HMRC had actually issued some guidance. Well, they have issued some guidance, but it turned out not to be clear, and the situation is different to what was previously the case. So whilst that at the moment doesn't affect the deadline date of 31st of March 2025 overall, the regulators, such as the Pension Ombudsman, could take the view that the sector is not making adequate progress in implementing the remedy. And I think there's also an increase in risk of complaints and legal proceedings resulting. So I think, again, the board should be aware that whilst locally we're doing everything we can, and West Yorkshire are doing everything they can, there continue to be events nationally that we think everything's clear, and then it comes out that it isn't, and further queries come up and things have to be placed on hold, or systems have to be amended and documents have to be amended. Board can, however, be assured that personnel retiring now, so those ones who are coming up to retirement or retired recently, they are receiving their remedy details and they're able to make their choice and receive the appropriate benefits. The issues are more with those that retired before October 23 and need a remedy payment rather than those that are retiring currently. You'll have seen that the risk register has been reviewed and updated. Not many changes this time, but I've amended it to reflect the aforementioned engagements with the tracing agency. The board training is now available via the LGA, and also that I've reported the breach on the Matthews letters to those that are no longer addressed to this meeting. I've also mentioned previously the financial impacts on the CFA. You'll no doubt recall that payments are usually classed as a scheme payment and therefore charged to the pension fund account, which is reimbursed by the government. However, that will feed through to future higher employer contribution rates in the future to pay for the additional costs. Government are funding that for the coming financial year 2024-25, but as things stand, there's no commitment to fund that additional cost from April 2025 onwards. So the cost of these exercises do remain a risk across the sector. Clearly, they've got to be funded somehow, and obviously, we aim to avoid making any payments that can't be charged to the pension fund account or the government reimbursement, because some compensation payments are not chargeable to the pension fund account, but the government have said they will reimburse them. But we are obviously trying to make sure we don't pay things that the CFA itself has to fund. As you know, Helen Skolger, who's our lead from West Yorkshire Pension Fund, our scheme administrator, is online. Sean Connor, the regional pensions advisor, is now here. So and obviously we have senior officers present as well. So hopefully together we can answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Colin, and I welcome Sean O'Connor to the meeting. And I also want to just confirm that we have now received the March update that was circulated to board members yesterday afternoon by Gemma. So hopefully we've got all the up-to-date information. Just a few points arising, Colin, from your introduction, and thank you very much for the report. With regard to the warm-up letters, and you described the technical breach, because I believe the number was 6 were returned not known at this address. And you mentioned the tracing agency that's going to, is the tracing agency going to concentrate just on those 6 or on all of those that just have not responded to the warm-up letters? Another point you've made, training for pension board members. Entirely agree with that. I'll be getting in touch with the LGA stroke Gemma to get some training in for myself. I think we're all aware that this is a complex and difficult exercise that a very small team, I think of 2.5 staff members, are working on. The deadline of March 2025, will that still be achieved? Is one question that I've got. And noting how small the team is that's dealing with this complex and difficult work, would you agree that it comes with a pretty high risk should one of those members of staff fall ill or have some sort of long-term absence from the work that they are doing? So those are my points. I'll let you respond to that before I open it up to board members.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Perhaps I'll deal with those in reverse order, because then I'll finish on the one that Sean may need to come in on as well. So yes, this clearly does come with a high risk. we have 2 staff within the finance team working on this more or less full time, and then we have their team leader who works on it part time, but also has the overall financial operations team to manage. And then there's some resource within the HR team that supports it. And obviously we also draw on Sean, who works across Leicestershire, Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire as a professional advisor, and Helen from West Yorkshire and her colleagues who provide our administrative service, but obviously also very linked in nationally as well. But yes, there is a key risk. I think I say on all of my reports now, this is a small team dealing with this, and if one or more of them were to go off for any length of time, we would be in some serious difficulty. Will we still achieve March 2025? I mean, that's the date set out in regulations. That's the date that we're all working to. But clearly, the more uncertainties that arise nationally and the more delays that arise in each stage, the more it pushes all of the work into a shorter period. So, I mean, one would hope that we will, and I think we're in a relatively good position as compared to fire authorities generally. But we are at the behest of what happens nationally to a large extent. So, as I say, the first 2 categories of remedy that was scheduled to be delivered by the end of March, mainly because of the tax issue, but also some other complications around remedial service statements. Administrators are not going to be able to deliver those. Now, clearly, when those are able to go, they're now going to take up time in, I don't know, April or May, for example, that would have been allocated to the next stages. So yeah, as things stand, I can't say it will. Well, I certainly can't say it won't. And clearly, that's the date in the regulations, and that's what everybody's still working towards. But a lot of this is driven nationally. And yeah, will the Trace Agency be engaged for? Yes, we were. I think we've had some discussion on this as officers across the 3 fire authorities. I think our initial view was we'd use the Trace Agency for those that were returned and gone away. But given that, say, with ours, for example, we've sent 370 out, had about 270 back, and that's similar to Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire in terms of rate of return. That's a lot out there that haven't come back. Now, some of those will be sitting on the shelf, not dealt with yet, or not quite sure how to deal with it. Others probably, there may have been a few that didn't get delivered. There may well be some that have arrived at a property where the person no longer lives there, but rather than putting it back in the post box, they put it in the recycling. So we've looked at the cost of all this, and given there's a relatively low cost with the tracing agency we're proposing to use, so we've taken the view that we'll actually do all of the ones for which we've not had responses, and then we can send a reminder letter out to them all, fairly confident we've got current addresses. But Sean can perhaps add to that, because Sean's been leading on this for us.
The short answer is we'll be using a tracing service for all of the non-returned expressions of interest, not just the 6 that we know were sent to the wrong address. This is a retrospective exercise. The majority of people we've had no contact with for 20 years. So the odds are there will be a lot of people who've moved address and simply not mind readers if they haven't told us. As Colin said, it's a relatively small cost to mitigate a potentially huge risk, because there are certain benefits that, should the firefighter member or a person who is eligible to become a member through this exercise have moved address, still alive today, but unfortunately dies at some point in the future, the service itself could be held responsible if we can't show that we've used best endeavours to trace that person. So there is the potential risk that someone might die in the meantime, the potential beneficiary loses out, and if we can't show best endeavours in line with the regulations, then it might be the service, the FRA, that's held financially responsible and has to purchase an annuity to make up that loss. So it's a relatively low cost to mitigate a potentially huge risk financially, and obviously a reputational risk. This is a once in a lifetime for those few hundred people to be given the opportunity to buy back a lot of pensionable service.
I fully understand the necessity of due diligence. Thank you for that, Sean. I'll open it up to other board members if there's any questions arising.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the update, Colin. Might be a question for Colin or Helen or Sean. Maybe just to assist with kind of understanding the administration stresses it might put on the authority / service. But obviously, some services, some authorities have started dealing with remedy with those that have retired previously. I don't know if there's any kind of insight how long it's taken administratively to sort of deal with those particular cases that might assist us in understanding what stress that might put on the fire service in the next 12 months.
Sorry, is this Matthews or Sergeant McLeod prioritising people who've already retired?
You're on. Sergeant McLeod.
That goes back to Colin's comment about HMRC changing their view of the interest not being taxable. So some work needs doing by both West Yorkshire with regards to the RSS and also GAD. And I think every difficult question, the difficult answer always involves going back to GAD. There are issues with the GAD calculator with regards to Matthews and Sergeant McLeod. GAD need to reprogram their calculator for the standalone tax calculator because of HMRC's changed stance. We're dealing with relatively low number of cases. The problem from Helen's point of view is she has 23 clients where she's dealing with a small number of cases for all 23. I think we have for Leicestershire 7 or 8 category 2 cases. Relatively, I know this is easy for me to say, but relatively small amounts owing to these people because they retired quite some time ago. Workload on the Leicestershire staff isn't that big with regards to those. Most of the work has been done. There will still be work for Helen's team to do, but really from a Leicestershire Fire and Rescue point of view, the bulk of the work now is on those Matthews candidates. Again, those Matthews cases will be prioritised for people who have either already invested for a shorter period and have retired, or even the people who have never invested but are already over their normal pension age, because obviously we already owe them, some people, 20 years arrears of pension. So they too will be prioritised, and that is where the bulk of work will be for these 2.5 people back in HQ. And the same once these people have been made the offer by the 2.5 people in Colin's team, those people who choose to invest, then Helen's team has the pensions to pay out to those people. So Sergeant McLeod, I wouldn't worry unduly. Once we've been given all the tools, HMRC have now done their bit, GAD still needs to do their bit, then there is the RSS. But there are relatively small numbers and not too much work for Leicestershire because that financial work has already been passed to Helen.
You go with that, Adam? Okay. And in respect of that taxable issue, it's not just the question of tax will be paid on the interest, as I understand it, but there's some discussion, or was some discussion, about the rate of tax to be levied. Has that been resolved?
I think the rate has been resolved, yes, because it's an unauthorised payment charge, so it's a 40% rate. I think there is another threshold, but I don't think Helen would know better, but I don't think anyone will breach that. The issue is also, it isn't as simple as the 8% interest is going to be taxed. It's not even as simple as the excess tax above the commercial rate, and the commercial rate is, let's say, 2%. So it isn't as simple as the 6% is going to be taxed. Each individual case has to be looked at. Is their overall lump sum above the HMRC threshold of 25% of the capital value. And does that 6% take them over the 25%, or doesn't it? Hence why we can't just go back to HQ and use a hand calculator on an iPhone. It's got to be that GAD do their wizardry behind the scenes, which unfortunately takes time. And with all of these pension exercises, it always goes back to GAD have a lot of reprogramming to do on these various GAD calculators, and that does tend to be the bottleneck.
It's very helpful, Sean. Karen, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's not necessarily a helpful comment, but it's important factors for us to understand. I think Colin's quite rightly said the resource is quite lean within the service. Even if we had the resources available, and we sat through the budget presentation at the last CFA, which is already showing we are tight for money, even if we had the ability to get more, we can't just go and get a specialist in firefighter pensions simply because they don't exist, or if they do exist, they've been snaffled up by other fire and rescue services. So there's a challenge around, even if we were able to get more resources, is it the right resource? Clearly, it's a busy time for the finance team as well, with end of financial year and new budget setting, etc. But I think the broader point I want to suggest is that it feels like the timeline's concertinaing again of we've done all we can do. We haven't yet got the tools available to us from GAD or central government, but the deadline is still set in stone. And the risk of us not making that deadline with the concertina timeline, unfortunately, falls on the fire authority, not central government. So I suppose it's the risk that we may potentially come up against it if GAD doesn't get itself sorted out or delivered. And the second thing is, should there be further claims around the interest rates being applied or any further challenges, they are actually against the authority, not against central government. So I think the risks are increasing in this, and we have very little ability to mitigate them because most of it's out of our control. But it's just to kind of put it on the record that will be against the authority as the pension scheme, as opposed to central government. Whilst they may be named as a secondary person in it, it's kind of on us, which feels ever so unfair because there's not a lot we can do at the moment. But it's just to put it on the record, really, Chair.
Thank you. We're not in a happy place, are we? So, and it's well worth reminding the board that these are complex issues, and it does require an expertise, which is not very common to be found out there. So, thank you for that. Anything else before we close the discussion on item 4? Scheme managers update. I think we're asked to note the report. We've made our comments, which have been recorded. So thank you for that. Thank you, Colin. We'll move on to item 5 on the agenda. Just to invite Helen Scargill now from the West Yorkshire Pension Fund to update by way of a verbal report. We don't have a written one, so look forward to hearing further from you, Helen.
Okay, thank you. So I was just really going to focus on the March bulletin that you've mentioned you kind of were sent yesterday, because obviously that's the most up-to-date position with everything. So just in terms of the key performance indicators on processing, there's a couple of areas that didn't meet the target, but actually in total it's just 2 cases. So we've got a death in retirement that it's set, the reason is they were a delay in receiving the death certificate, and there's 1 estimate out of 6 that we did that went outside the kind of time frames. And as it says there, we provide estimates to people who request it within a 12-month rolling date, but obviously we prioritise the more recent dates to try and get that information out to allow people to hand the notice in if those figures mean that they want to retire. So this case will have had a later retirement date. So although not meeting the targets wasn't particularly late in terms of member detail. The next part are all just letting kind of details of work in progress, what we've got outstanding to do. just as you know, we just keep you up to date with who signed up to the member web in each of these. So it looks like we've had a really small increase in for the March bulletin. Again, that's fine. It's kind of steadily moving, and I think what will happen is we will be in contact with all our fire clients around the time that the remediable service statement is going to go, and we'll ask all our fire clients to put a communication out asking people who are not already signed up to the web to sign up, because that's where that financial data will be. So hopefully when that happens, we'll see an increase in that, in the number that are signed up for web access. Again, then we just supply you with membership numbers month on month, so you can just see what your position is, and we supply the graphs there as well to show kind of any changes. Just hopefully just helpful basic information for you. So we've got the pensioners, and then at number 5, that's our kind of administration update. So the first one is just to let you know that as an administrator, we have received a survey from the Scheme Advisory Board, really about readiness and readiness for Sergeant and the implementation of it, and problems and issues. And they are asking our views on where we think certain FRAs are. Have we received everything that we need to receive from the FRAs, and some parts of that. So what we're saying here is we will be naming the FRAs unless an FRA comes to us and says that they don't want to be named in any of the questions. I don't think that there's no issues with the data from Leicestershire, because we've received there was 3 what we called data extracts for remedy. One was to do with hours and whether people were whole-time and part-time and retained and had changes. Another one was to do with any unpaid periods of absence, to make sure that our records were correct for that 7-year remedy period. And then the other one is referred to as the financial data extract, and it's to do with the pay and contributions that somebody would have had as a member of the 2015 scheme as compared to what they would have been in their final salary scheme. And we've had all 3 from yourselves. So the only thing that is outstanding is the GAD contribution adjustment calculator, and we haven't had that for anybody, for any of our fire clients, because it's just, the calculator's came late from GAD, and really we don't feel that anybody's had sufficient time. So we haven't, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's anything that we would be naming yourselves as. But as I say, we are giving all FRAs the opportunity to come back to us if they don't want to be named. But as it says in there, all the information we provide is confidential, and it's being supplied so that the local government association can provide assistance to any fire authorities that are lagging behind a bit or seeming to be having difficulties complying. So as I say, we've just put that information out there for Leicestershire. I don't think you need to concern yourselves with it. Then just again, more of a kind of reassurance piece for pension boards. We were audited by the auditors of one of our fire authorities, and at the end of that audit, and we're just saying there, they concluded that we've got robust controls in place to manage the pensions admin processes, and the controls are being followed in practice. We've got working instructions for different work types, and all staff have access to them. We deal with starters, leavers and any amendments correctly, and the pension payment runs are reconciled, and there's processes in place to recover overpayments. So that was their response to the audit. So hopefully, again, that's, you might not have done that exact same audit with us, but there's some reassurances for you as a board as to what, what auditors are saying. So then each April, as you're probably aware, each April benefits that are due to be paid for leavers on deferred status and those pensions that are actually in payment increase by the relevant pensions increase order. This year, I think the date of the increase is the 8th of April, and the increase is 7%. And just to kind of let you know that we are doing those updates to deferred pensions commencing next Monday. So hopefully they'll all be updated before we get to the 8th. And we have applied pensions increase to the majority of our pensioners as well. So that's the bulk of that's been done. So that just means that we're in a position once we get past April to the relevant April payroll, monthly payroll run, that we'll be paying everybody the correct amount for April. In our last report, following an item in the LGA bulletin on injury pensions, for those retained firefighters who were appointed after the 5th of April 06, we just gave you an update that said we're aware of this item and we will be working on it. And this is just as an update to say that we've worked through the list, and we have actually found a number of cases that have been calculated incorrectly. So over the next 3 months, we'll be going through those and putting them right. This will, if you have a case, this will involve a bit more money coming out of your operating budget, because these are obviously payments out of the compensation scheme, and the way that the benefits have actually been calculated following the part-time regulation in the compensation scheme regulations, as opposed to the one for retained. The part-time calculation gives lower benefits. So these changes are going to increase the injury pensions due to these members. And we've also found a handful of cases where the ill health equivalent pension should be non-taxable, and it's actually currently on payroll as taxable. So, and I don't believe any of these are Leicestershire. So we'll be rectifying those as we go forward as well. I think those non-taxable ones might just be one FRA that obviously missed them when the bulk job to change all the payments to non-taxable was done. Just in there, we'll just a bit of information for those who deal with pensions at the FRA about what forms we need for leavers and retirements. So that I don't need to go into detail there. That's just updating everybody what we require. Then we're just confirming that we haven't come up with any data breaches for Leicestershire in the relevant month. And then got a section on communication and training. So we've added some more pre-retirement courses with affinity for firefighters, and there's information on our website about all the dates and what the course is. So again, that's just something that we would like FRAs to make sure that they communicate out, because I think it's just it's a half-day course online. So because the number of days, there's more choices for firefighters to certainly get the background information that they need coming up to retirement. We also offer induction courses on the fire pension scheme for any new recruits. And so if you would like us to do that for you, you just need to get in contact and email David Parrington. And then we're just detailing some training sessions that we're doing for FRAs, covering monthly postings, year end, and how to use our online services for administrators. And again, there's been information out there and links to be able to book. So again, we're just hopefully trying to give you the tools that you'll need to provide the information that we need in a timely and accurate manner, so that administration processing goes as smoothly as it can. And then the next bit is just the kind of meetings that we've attended over the month. So we've had 3 pension boards, and then, as you can see, I've been attending some kind of more national level meetings. Then we haven't got any updates on any specific member cases. And then from our IT, just the updates that with the pension dashboard, the staging date is the 30th September. And we'll, as we move forward now through the process, we'll just keep you updated with all the stages that we're going through. But we have been working very closely. And I think I think we might be a beta testing site for dashboards. So we're actually having a lot of meetings at that higher level, so that everything can be discussed, and we can kind of let them know if certain things that they're planning are going to cause problems, or what timescales might be, or issues, or how easy or difficult certain things might be to do. So we've been involved in that right from the beginning. We've also got something called, and we've had something called this ISO 9001:2015 quality management system in place for a lot of years. It's changed its name a number of times over the period, but we were reassessed for that on the 11th, in December, and everything was successful, and they raised no non-conformities. And then there's just the executive summary that they put forward there. So again, just another reassurance piece about how we monitor ourselves, and also the reassurance for you that nothing major has been raised through any of these. And then after that, there's nothing really that I would want to discuss. These are all just the normal items. And then once you get to 12, it's what we've pulled through from the bulletins that LGA have produced. So actually at number 12, the first point about the care revaluation issue, that was where incorrect rate was applied in 21 and 22, I can confirm that all the records for active members have been updated to reflect the change. We will be looking at the pensioner members independently. So a number of them will be dealt with as part of immediate choice. And then those that are not in scope for remedy and obviously are not being looked at for immediate choice, we'll look at separately and make the changes and put the revised amount into payment. And our internal IT are currently doing the work to put the deferred records in the correct state and format as well. So that's just an ongoing piece of work there. So, and I don't think any of the other actions are, well, the action about the HMRC lifetime allowance guidance newsletter, we're still waiting for some the regulations to be, additional regulations to actually be laid, and confirmation of exactly how the reporting should be done. But we're aware of that. And also in terms of the changes, we're actually getting an external company to come in next month and provide some training to our staff on what the budget changes in March 23 mean to us in processing, and what the amendment regulations HMRC are putting through really mean to us as well. So it's quite it was a very simple change that said we're abolishing the lifetime allowance, but actually, as far as administrators and processing, it's made the whole thing much more complicated. So because of that, we've decided to get some training for our staff. And then after that, there's nothing else. There's nothing else that I would want to raise. So has anybody got any questions on any of that for me?
Well, thank you very much, Helen. Much appreciated. And as I mentioned, we've got that monthly bulletin that was circulated yesterday afternoon. Thank you so much for going through that. With regard to the breaches on the processes, I appreciate that the notes that go with that. Clearly, if there's a delay in a death certificate, there's not a lot that the fund administrator can do with regard to that. And with regard to ensuring the more priority notices are dealt with, again, that's understandable, and there does not appear to be any prejudice to any member that has written in to that. So for me, no real concern with regard to the breach on processes. Interesting point about the injury pensions incorrect calculations that you highlighted, Helen. That you did indicate may well have an impact on the budget. So far as any cases involving Leicestershire concerned, have you got any idea what sort of figures that may be in scope here?
Let me just see if I can. No, it doesn't look like there's any Leicestershire cases that are impacted. So there's nothing.
I think the board members would be relieved to hear that. Thank you for clarifying. Those are really just the 2 points I wanted to make. I'll open it up to fellow board members if there's any comment or question of Helen. There are none. Does anybody else? Callum?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Helen, you mentioned about the annual lifetime allowance, which I totally understand. Is there any update around annual allowances and breaches thereof as well? Just conscious I've had quite a lot of questions by quite a few officers now who have believe they've breached annually, and we're still waiting of how we should proceed with tax returns, etc. Is there any update at all?
Right, so if anybody has breached in the 22-3 tax year, then you don't do anything on your tax return. So if you fill a tax return in anyway, then you fill the tax return in as normal. You just don't put anything in about annual allowance. And if you are somebody that doesn't complete a self-assessment normally and would only be completing one because of the annual allowance breaches, then you don't complete it. What will happen is obviously on the 1st of October 2023, every active member was rolled back into their relevant legacy scheme for that 7-year period. And we then need to reassess everybody's annual allowance from 15-16 right through to 22-23 as a result of being put back into the final salary scheme. And we then need to send a extended pension saving statement, call it a remedy pension saving statement, to everybody, and that statement has to say this is the position that you were in based on whatever regular, whenever you transitioned into the 2015 scheme. This is the current position. These are the figures for your growth. This is the details of any tax charge that was paid in whichever year. We then have to give the information, the pension input amounts, the growth for 2015-16 through to 22-23 based on legacy scheme membership. And we also then have to supply the figures for 2010-11 through to 14-15. When somebody gets that, they then have to go to the HMRC remedy tax calculator. They need to complete that, and that then tells them their remedy tax position. That information filters its way back to us, and then we need to reassess scheme pays debits for any of the affected years. And I think we have a deadline of the 6th of October 24 to get these remedy pension saving statements out.
Does that help, Callum?
I'll use my professional voice and say thank you very much. I'll probably pick it up outside of the meeting, Chair.
Sensibly, I think that's an appropriate thing to do, because that seemed to be quite technical, and it may be something that you'd like to see in writing from Helen, and follow it through there, because I was just trying to imagine you, you said you had a number of people asking you about that. I was just trying to imagine you giving Helen's answer to those people. I've got a huge respect for your capabilities, Callum. You probably wanted Helen over your shoulder or something from her for that. So that's very good. Thank you very much. Anything else before we let Helen go? So thank you very much. Item 5 is the scheme administrators update. I think we're just asked to note that. So we all agreed, board members, to do so. Thank you. And thank you, Helen, very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks. See you all later.
Yeah. Item 6, the employee representative input. Adam, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Nothing to input. Obviously, we've had the updates, which are useful. There is a legacy case that we are dealing with that sits outside of this, which I'll pick up with Colin and Helen. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. That moves us to item 7. Date of our next meeting is the 4th of September. And I think we've all had the meeting invite circulated by Gemma yesterday as well with regard to that. Can you just clarify, Gemma, can you remind me, will that be here or will it be at fire headquarters?
It should be at the fire headquarters.
Yeah. Okay, that's grand. And so at 10:54, I will close the pension board meeting. And again, thank you all for your attendance contributions this morning. Thank you. Bye-bye.